war, death, famine, pestilence, war, death, famine, pestilence. Just another day, it won't take me out my element. Way my racks are growing, I thought I was on that estrogen. Wait, that's black excellence. Iced out, I'm looking elegant. She said I was broke, that hoe must be smoking mescaline. Made a milli off the OnlyFans, we've reached decadence. Yeah, wait. They sent the towers up to heaven for the hell of it. That's alright, that's Gerbert. He's back. Gerby is back. I don't know if you've seen the news recently or you pay attention to what the comings and goings of the kids these days, but there's this new thing going on where, let's say you're a guy, right? You're born a guy, you're born a little baby boy, you have the boy parts. Now what they're doing, and no one's even talking about this, but now what they're doing is you can flip the script on them. Change up the tune. Change up the whole vibe. Using certain medical procedures, you can turn into a woman if you're this guy, or if you were a woman, you could turn into a guy. You could just totally, kind of like an RPG, character selection screen, you could change your gender. They call them transgender, because you're transitioning from the... Now, I don't hate these people. I harbor no resentment in my heart towards these people. A lot of them seem pretty chill. They seem to be pretty good at using a digital audio workstation. In my observation, don't know what it is. I'm listening to Spotify, some mix. I hear a new song. I'm like, wow, did a chick really cook this up in Ableton? And I just investigate a little further, and there's always more to the story. Either way, I have no hatred for these people. But I have noticed a strange and sinister pattern emerge. I have eyes, I have ears, I have observed something. A connection, possibly a strong correlation between gooning and transitioning. Upon noticing this connection, I've seen it to be pretty strong. Enough for me to put forward that what is known as gender dysphoria is something, a neurosis, that is developed and crystallized in people with a pornography addiction. These two things are strongly correlated. Now, something to note is that there are a lot more, I think multiple times more, way more male to female trans people than there are female to male. And in this case, I'm mostly talking about the former. It might apply both ways, but I have experience, like I know people, I see a lot more male to female. And also I've spent a good chunk of my teen years on the old hub where men like to beat off. I've never really sat down and read one of these female goon smut novels. I would probably rather shin kick a fire hydrant. The way they interact with adult content is quite different. So I'm mostly talking about male to female trans people, which are the majority. Now, don't be obtuse and misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying every guy that beats off is going on to start flipping the script on them. What I am saying is that if you're really about that goon life, it's one of several paths that you can take. One of them is the femboy road. Other examples of roads, the cuck road, the furry road, the pedophile road, the anime road. Some of these roads are worse than others. I'm not equivocating them all. There are levels to this goon shit. You have to understand. There's a goon hierarchy. And Nietzsche talked about this, it's like the dragon is the serpent, the dragon of chaos, and it goes to the top of the dominance hierarchy. And only the real gooners. At the bottom of the goon hierarchy, you have just basic beaters, the basic beaters. They might whack off every once in a while, a few times a week, once a week, something like that. They're just on Instagram. They see something that gets them going, some reels, some still image of some model or some OnlyFans girl doing a little dance to promote her OnlyFans, but they don't actually sign up to OnlyFans. They just beat off to the little TikTok. You know what I'm saying? You keep going up the pyramid in frequency and intensity and perversity of the content consumed. So you go up, you got guys that go on the hub and they're just looking at the homepage. They find one they like. Then you got guys, they're doing it more often. They're looking for specific things. You got the Hinte, the manhwa type fellas. They're into the drawings because they can be more cartoonish and hyperbolistic in the features and the act and everything. You got guys looking for specific stuff. Then you got the real gooners. Because gooning, as I've found out, I used to just use it interchangeably with whacking off. Gooning technically, and Nietzsche talked about this, gooning is closer to edging, if we're going to use the term technically. So it's whacking, it's going off to the edge, but you're not finishing. You know, the basic beaters, they just whack off for a few minutes, they're done. Boom, bap. The real gooners, and this is how you really fry your brain, where you extend it for long periods of time and you're gooning. This is how you really open the portal to the lower realms of clip hop. What I am positing is that if you go up a few rungs on the goonarchy, you look at this group of guys that are there. Transgenderism is probably proportionally overrepresented in this group by a factor of 20 to 25 times as much, in my estimations and calculations. Now, there's no extensive research about this because research requires funding, and this would be a politically abrasive and risky thesis to test. This is just an inference. If you want to see the brain scans on pornography addiction, I've made a bunch of videos on this, but you could just go to yourbrainonporn.com. I might throw up screenshots of studies or some sources if I care enough to. I'm probably talking to my echo chamber anyways. This is not like an academic channel. This is my rant channel. So we'll see, whatever. There's no studies about it, but there's studies that could point to it and infer. You can draw inferences from them. In my mind, this connection is clear. I see it plain as day. So the question to ask is why? Here's an email I got. Horrific corn addiction led me to meeting a transgender for sex. Well, you've piqued my interest with this one. I'll tell you that much. The crazy part is, in the duration of me having these channels, I've probably seen this scenario through confessions, emails, DMs, all of it, several times. Guys have sent me this, trying to confide in me this scenario. And they can't, I believe them, but that's just a little nitpick. I'm going to have to leave the internet. It's really damaging. Anyways, here's the email. Ever since I was 11, I've been beating my meat hardcore. True. You know, the usual. When I was around 16, I did nofap successfully for about half a year. Then life happened, stress happened, and I started whacking it again. This went on for a while, and I started having to masturbate to weird stuff just so I could nut. Nothing immoral, just weird. One of these being transgender she-male. In parentheses, right wing to femboy pipeline is real. See, emails like this, it's just, I like seeing these. I need more of these because there's just so much to think about here. Wow, this should be studied. Nietzsche talked about this. Anyway, so I was probably jerking it to this stuff for about a year until one day I decided it would be fun to meet one of them in real life. After my gay mate showed me how easy it is to get sex on Grindr. So long story short, yeah, please keep it short. I find this relatively attractive transgender, message her, and within 20 minutes, I'm in her hotel room. It's that easy, folks. we start, okay, you know what? At second thought, I'm not going to read this shit. Oh, get me off, dude. No, man. I'm not going to read it. You get it, okay? You get the gist. It's a tale as old as time, really. Our parents used to read us stories like this, ghost stories, fairy tales before we went to bed. And Nietzsche talked about this, but a famous example you could bring up is Chris Tyson of Mr. Beast fame. This man was a well-documented, high-level goon warlock. But then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he did the maneuver. He flipped the script on him. Now he's a shouty. Many such cases. What this exhibits is the addiction cycle, sensitization and desensitization. So you start whacking up, you climb the hierarchy, and the content you pursue as your brain becomes desensitized and fried, especially if you're gooning and not basic beating, you need to pursue more and more novel content. So there's a whole branching web of different fetishes and things you need to get into in order to get off. And I've seen it many times, whether it be my experience on these channels, getting confessions and emails with famous people. I've even had a little brush of it with people I know. Also seen, I just remembered this clip. This would go well here. So the comedian Matt McCusker. This is a Joe Rogan clip. Let's see here.
No, it's not,
it's weak, dude.
You got
it's
nice
weak.
willpower.
But you quit selling drugs and you quit watching porn. You have good willpower.
You have great willpower.
That took a while. And also it took some bad events.
But you did quit. That's
True.
what willpower is about.
True.
Also, he's discussed what type of porn he's into.
What kind?
I was just saying everything, brother. I went down some dark alleys. The
The
T's,
darkest
brother.
alley.
The T's.
The
T1000s? What's that? What are you talking about?
T's.
What's the Terminator T1000?
Yeah.
He ran into some T1000s.
The boys and the girls. When the boys become girls.
When the boys become girls, and
Oh, the T's. That could be an issue.
He didn't like
Joe, I'll tell you, it is.
You know?
Talking about supernormal stimuli, dude. That's why I'm so passionate about that. It's like your
Exactly,
brain,
exactly.
you need like the edge. And this was my problem with it. I go to like something a little bit more kind of out there. And then you finally, you land on those shores and you go, my God.
So that's what it is. It's desensitization, which causes your brain to seek novel stimulus. Now, in this case, he's talking about beating off to it. But first, you beat off to him, then you join him. That's what my grandfather always said. I would put forth that, especially in the last 10 years, a majority of the male to female trans people, prior to transitioning, watched trans pornography and enjoyed it and utilized it. So that's the first reason why I think is desensitization and seeking novel stimuli, which can lead you down this path. The second thing is trauma. The people I know that have transitioned had a rough go of it in their childhood, in their home life. Something happened. You know, I do not have resentment for these people. I find it tragic more than anything. Certain traumas happening young or lack of certain figures could create gender dysphoria. And what needs to be understood about pornography is that it's rape. A lot of people might not be ready for this conversation, but it is what it is. Like, you start beating off when you're barely, sometimes when you're prepubescent, when you're barely pubescent, when you're 11, 12 years old, to hardcore pornography that's readily available, shoved in your face, just 2 clicks away when you're curious and it's there and there's nothing preventing you, unless you had parents who really cracked down on it, or you didn't have access to the internet. When you get exposed to that stuff at that young an age, do not get it twisted, you've been raped. That's what it is. I'm not joking about it. Yeah. So this kind of stuff, you're exposed to it young, it can develop all sorts of problems, really. That's why it's sad, when people have a broken home life and then they're exposed to this stuff when they're very young, and it just turns into this, and they go down these paths. The whole experience and getting addicted to it, as you develop, is traumatic, but there are also certain instances where you can be traumatized by things you see, and it could not be that bad. It could be bad. I mean, the way these things work is complicated, but I remember getting a little traumatized by just a video that was on YouTube, and I'm sure other people around my age bracket know this video and share this experience. Kind of born in the first half of the 2000s. It's like kind of an anime aesthetic. These kids are sneaking into this pool. It has this like aquatic, haunting sort of electronic song, and they sneak into the pool, and then things go awry. Let's just put it that way. And I saw that when I was very young, and it was just like so gross and fucked up, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah, really, it messed me up, man. So you have desensitization, you have trauma. The next thing I would say, the third reason there is this connection between adult content and transitioning is the general neuroticism that comes from chronic pornography usage. So I'm referring to things like increased amygdala volume, which would cause higher anxiety, higher fear, reduced gray matter in the reward circuitry, short-circuiting your dopamine pathways. As I've explained before, it's not so much that you're losing dopamine or you're running out of dopamine. It has to do with the pathways the dopamine takes. So it favors one pathway over the other. There's the mesolimbic and the mesocortical. One is much faster. Immediate gratification, whatever. I've talked about this before. The general neuroticism that comes from this addiction. It leads to anxiety. It leads to depression, lack of motivation. It leaves you vulnerable to anything. And you'll seek answers. You'll seek ways to fix it. You know, these people are struggling. They have a high rate of self-harm. This may have been true before and after the transition. And they're left vulnerable. They might seek psychotherapy. And you can go down a rabbit hole. They're taking all these drugs. You know what I'm saying? The works. So those are the three main reasons I could think of right now. Desensitization, trauma, and the general other associated brain changes of pornography addiction, the general neurosis that comes from it. Depression and anxiety, and things of that nature. So that's what it is. I wish I was wrong. Maybe I am wrong. If you disagree, tell me in the comments. Look, I'm a young, impressionable guy. You could change my mind. When sexual immorality is rampant, something like pornography, people become governed by their desires, their lustful desires, and they become very predictable, and they entrench themselves in these sexual identities. And this is true of all identities, but something about the nature of these sexual identities, people will defend them with their lives. It's especially touchy. And I suppose something like that has happened. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm wrong. I might flip the script on them. Could be a vibe. You know, I wonder if I'd be pretty. Would I be pretty? Would I be bad? I don't know. I feel like I might be pretty bad. I feel like I might be pretty bad, little shawty. I've been recording too long, huh? Give me that.